The chandelier above Ethan Cole's head held 412 crystals. He knew because he had installed it himself 2 days before Christmas, hanging from a scaffolding rig 16 feet above the ballroom floor while the catering staff below set white linens on tables he would never sit at. He had counted the crystals then, not because he needed to, but because counting gave him something to do with his hands, while the rest of him was somewhere else entirely. Somewhere back home. Somewhere in the small bedroom down the hall from the kitchen, watching a 5-year-old boy push a toy truck across the floorboards and making the engine sounds himself because there was no one left to do it with him. Noah made good engine sounds. Ethan pressed the heel of his palm against the edge of the table and felt the familiar resistance of scar tissue, a ridge of skin along his right thumb from a copper pipe that had misbehaved 7 years ago, before Noah was born. Before the wedding. Before everything. He had not noticed the scar in a long time. He noticed it now because the tablecloth was white and expensive, and his hands looked like they belonged somewhere else. The tea in the cup in front of him was cold. He hadn't drunk it. He had ordered it because the server, a young woman with a name tag that read Jess, had looked at him with a very specific kind of confusion when he'd sat down. The kind that said, "Are you?" And he had wanted to give her something to do, something to carry on a silver tray so that her confusion had a resolution and they could both pretend the interaction had made sense. She'd brought Earl Grey. He'd said thank you. She'd gone away. The tea had cooled. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, Boston was disappearing. The snow had started at 4 in the afternoon as a suggestion, small flakes, spaced far apart, the kind that children chase and adults ignore. By 6:30, it had become something serious. Now, at 8:15, the city beyond the glass was a smudge of amber and white, the outlines of buildings softening, the street below empty of everything except a single taxi that crept past like a cautious animal. The ballroom of the Harrington Grand Hotel was warm and bright and loud in the way that expensive rooms full of expensive people always were, not loud with a single noise, but with 100 small ones layered over each other. Glasses. Laughter. The quartet in the corner playing something that Ethan didn't recognize. Heels on marble. The soft percussion of one person leaning toward another to say something that was not meant to be heard. He was not a guest at this event. He had been called in at 4 o'clock to fix a secondary heating unit in the East Corridor, a thermostat relay that had decided, in the way that old electrical systems often did, to simply stop cooperating on the worst possible night. He had fixed it in 40 minutes. Then he had been told, by a harried facilities coordinator named Greg, to wait in case anything else went wrong before he could submit his hours and collect his service ticket. That had been 4 hours ago. Greg had not come back. Ethan was not angry about this. He was familiar with the experience of being placed somewhere and left. He had learned, over the past 3 years, to carry that particular patience in the same pocket as his work gloves and his pocket flashlight always available, never examined too closely. He looked at the chandelier again. Crystal number 412 was slightly crooked. He had noticed it during installation, but hadn't been able to reach it from the scaffolding angle without dismantling a section of the rig. And the hotel events manager had been standing below him, checking her watch, so he had let it go. He let it go now, too. His phone had 43% battery. Noah was with Mrs. Paulson next door, a retired kindergarten teacher who charged $12 an hour and always gave Noah oatmeal cookies that he claimed he didn't like and always ate completely. Ethan had texted at 6. She had sent back a photo of Noah asleep on her couch, with a coloring book open across his chest and 3 empty cookie wrappers on the cushion beside him. He looked at the photo again now. The way Noah slept, head tilted to the right. One sock on and one sock off, mouth open very slightly, was identical to the way Claire had slept. Same angle, same half-open mouth, same absolute confidence in the safety of wherever they had landed. He locked his phone. He looked at the cold tea. He looked at the room full of people who had not once looked at him. That was when they arrived. He did not see them approach. He heard them first 4 sets of small feet in dress shoes on marble, a sound like a slow, careful drum roll, and then they were simply there. Standing in a neat line on the other side of the table, 4 identical faces looking at him with the focused, unblinking assessment of children who have already decided something and are waiting to confirm it. They were perhaps 6 years old. They were wearing dresses, the blue-green of shallow ocean water, all 4 of them, with white sashes at the waist and small pearl buttons down the back. Their hair was the same dark brown, pulled back with varying degrees of success, one braid perfectly tight, one half falling out, one held with a ribbon that had migrated to the back of the ear, one that had apparently given up on organization entirely and simply existed. They were the most serious children Ethan had ever seen. The one with the tightest braid placed 3 folded bills on the table, 2 5s and a 1, very deliberately, as though completing a transaction she had prepared for. No one spoke for a moment. Then, the one with the escaped ribbon said, "We watched you for 11 minutes. Ethan looked at the money. He looked at the children. "You're the only one not pretending," the one with the half-fallen braid said. "Pretending what?" Ethan asked. The 4 of them exchanged a glance, quick, synchronized, the kind of communication that happens between people who have never had to explain themselves to each other. The one who had placed the money spoke again. Her voice was very level. "We'd like to hire you. For the evening. To pretend to be our father." Ethan looked at the $11 on the white tablecloth for a moment. Then he looked up. "What are your names?" he asked. The one with the tight braid, Luna. The one with the ribbon, Ivy. The half-fallen braid, Nora. The 4th one, the one who had said nothing yet, had her hands folded in front of her and her eyes fixed somewhere near his left shoulder. She said, very quietly, "Elise." "Ethan," he said. Then, because it seemed fair, "Why 11 minutes?" Luna considered this. "That's how long we needed to be sure." "Sure of what?" "That you were actually not pretending." She glanced at the rest of the room with the cool assessment of someone much older. "Everyone in here is pretending. The laughing, the listening, the caring. They're all doing it like it's something they decided to perform." Nora nodded solemnly. "You were just sitting." "You looked kind of sad," Ivy offered, "but in a real way." Ethan said, "I'm not sad." The 4 of them looked at him with identical, polite skepticism. "We're not asking you to actually be sad," Luna said. "We're asking you to sit with us and look like our father when Mr. Cross comes back." "Who is Mr. Cross?" Another synchronized glance. "He's the man our mother almost married," Nora said. "He wants her to marry him again," Ivy added. "He's very interested in how things look," Luna said. "If there is a father present, he will be less interested." Elise still had not looked directly at Ethan. She was studying the buttons on her cuff. Ethan leaned back in his chair. He understood, with the instinct of someone who had spent a significant portion of his adult life in rooms where he was meant to be invisible, that something was being asked of him that had nothing to do with pretending, not in the way the children meant. What was being asked was whether he was willing to be seen by them, on their behalf. "What happened to your actual father?" he asked. The silence that followed was its own kind of answer, not the silence of a secret, but of a fact that had been examined so many times it had lost its shock value. "He left," Luna said, "when we were 3. He said 4 was too many," Nora said, not with bitterness, with the flat factuality of a child who has been told something and has integrated it into her understanding of the world without being entirely sure where to file it. "4 is a lot," Ethan said carefully. "We know," Ivy said, "but we were already there." Ethan was quiet for a moment. He had a son who was 5 years old and who made engine sounds for his own toys, and who ate oatmeal cookies in someone else's home on nights like this one. He had a son who had once, at age 4, asked why other children at the park had 2 people pushing their swings and then, before Ethan could answer, had shrugged and said, "It's okay, you have strong arms." He had a son who had never met his mother and who nonetheless slept with the same absolute confidence in the safety of wherever he landed. 4 was a lot, but being already there seemed like the relevant fact. He looked at the $11. "I don't want the money," he said. Luna's expression shifted almost imperceptibly, not disappointment. Exactly. More like recalibration. "We don't have more." "I know. I don't want it at all." He picked up the bills and held them out. "Keep it." "Then what do you want?" Nora asked. He thought about it. The quartet in the corner had shifted to something slower. Snow ticked against the glass. Greg was almost certainly not coming back tonight. "I'll sit with you," he said. "If you sit with me, that's the trade." Luna looked at her sisters. They arrived at a decision in the way they arrived at everything collectively, silently, through some internal channel that required no words. "Agreed?" she said. And she picked up the $11 and folded them back into a pocket Ethan hadn't noticed in the seam of her dress. They pulled 4 chairs to his table, not asking. Doing it with the efficient organization of people who have long practice managing their own logistics. Nora moved the cold tea to make room. Ivy rearranged the breadbasket. Luna sat directly across from Ethan with her hands folded on the table. Elise sat at the end, close enough to be part of the table but angled slightly away, still not quite meeting his eyes. A server came by. Ethan ordered another tea hot this time and 4 small hot chocolates without asking the girls, and when they arrived, Luna said thank you with the gravity of a formal acceptance of terms. "You have a son," Nora said. It was not a question. Ethan looked at her. "Your keychain." She nodded toward his jacket pocket, where the loop of a child's clay handprint keychain was just visible, small, painted red, with 5 distinct finger impressions and the initials NC scratched into the back. That's a child's handprint. You carry it outside your pocket, not inside. "You want to see it?" He looked down at it. He had forgotten he was doing that. "His name is Noah," Ethan said. "He's 5. Where is he tonight?" Ivy asked. "With a neighbor." "He's probably asleep. Does he know you're here?" "He knows I'm working." "Do you work here a lot?" "Sometimes. When they call me." He wrapped his hands around the new cup of tea. The warmth was straightforward and good. "I fix things. Pipes, wiring, heating systems, whatever's broken." "That's useful," Luna said, with the tone of someone who genuinely means it. "Someone has to," he said. Elise finally looked at him. It was brief, a glance that lasted perhaps 2 seconds, but it was direct. Her eyes were very dark and very steady, and there was something in them that was not quite sadness and not quite assessment, but somewhere in between, like a question that had been asked many times and given up on receiving an answer. Then she looked back at her cup. Ethan did not press it. Outside, the snow had intensified. The window behind Ethan had become a shifting field of white, not dark anymore. Not city-colored, just white on white on white, the way deep winter eventually erases the distinction between sky and ground. He said 4 was too many. Nora said again. Not like she was bringing it up again. Like she was completing a thought she'd started earlier and hadn't finished. "I heard you," Ethan said. "It's the kind of thing you don't understand when it happens," she said. "And then you understand it later. And then you don't know whether understanding it is better or worse." Ethan looked at her, this 8-year-old person, dark-haired and serious, with her half-fallen braid and her hot chocolate, and thought, someone in that house has been honest with them. Not brutal, honest. There was a difference. "Both," he said. "It's both." Nora considered this. "Yes," she said. "I think so too." He saw her before the children did. She came through the far door of the ballroom, the one that connected to the private dining suite where, presumably, the actual gala dinner portion of the evening was concluding, and she walked the way people walk when they have been managing a room for hours and are still managing it, even as they cross from one room to another. Head slightly forward, eyes already scanning. Not anxious, something past anxious, into the country on the other side where everything is simply continuous problem-solving. She was, he estimated, in her early 40s. Dark hair up, a few strands fallen at the temple in a way that was probably unintended. She was wearing something charcoal gray that worked not because it was glamorous, which it also was, but because it looked like something she had put on, with the specific intention of not having to think about it for the rest of the evening. Her earrings were small. Her watch was real. She was scanning the room. She found what she was looking for, 4 identical blue-green dresses at a table in the corner, and her expression shifted. Not warm, exactly. Not relieved. More like confirmed, as expected, acceptable. And then she saw him. The shift this time was different. Her stride didn't change, still the same smooth walk, same scan forward, but something in the set of her shoulders altered. And Ethan, who had spent a significant portion of his working life reading structural conditions from 50 feet away, read it correctly. Recalculation in progress. She arrived at the table. The girls, who had clocked her entry approximately 4 seconds after Ethan, were arranged in their chairs with the collective composure of people who have prepared for this moment and are feeling reasonably confident about their preparation. "Mom," said Ivy, "you're done early." "The Kellerman presentation ran short," said the woman, and she looked at Ethan with the direct, unreadable gaze of someone accustomed to receiving information and determining its category. "I don't think we've met." "Ethan Cole," he said. He did not stand up. Standing up, in this room, in these clothes, would have made things stranger, not more polite. "I was called in to fix the heating. I've been waiting for my supervisor to come back. He works here," Luna said carefully. "He fixes things. We invited him to sit with us," Nora said. The woman who had not given her name, though Ethan had already placed her. He had seen the name on the gala placard by the entrance. Victoria Hale, Hale Systems, and the face matched the photo on the placard looked at him for another moment. She pulled out the empty chair at the table. She sat down. "Victoria Hale," she said, though she did not extend her hand. "I know," he said. The placard, something crossed her face that might have been the precursor to a smile, if it had developed further. It didn't develop. "Did my daughters ask you for anything strange?" "They asked me to sit with them. That's all?" He looked at Luna. Luna looked at the tablecloth. "That's all," he said. Victoria Hale picked up one of the remaining napkins on the table, folded it once, set it down. A small, contained movement. "They've been managing me all evening," she said. "Not to Ethan, exactly. To the middle space of the table. I have 4 of them and they coordinate. I noticed," he said. "They do it very quietly. And then you realize the strategy has already been executed." A pause. "Where is your supervisor?" "Greg." He looked across the room. "I genuinely don't know. I'll have someone find him," she said. Not an offer. A statement of impending action. "You don't have to. You've been sitting here for hours," she said. "That's not right." He didn't argue. He arrived at the table 11 minutes later. Ethan clocked him from across the room, not because he was the kind of person who stood out, but because he was the kind of person who was always watching everyone else to make sure he was standing out correctly. He was perhaps 45, lean, well-fitted suit of a gray that was slightly more interesting than Victoria's charcoal, intentionally so, Ethan suspected. Silver at the temples. Good shoes. The kind of man who had learned, early, that presentation was load-bearing. He smiled when he saw Victoria. He smiled when he looked at the girls. He smiled when he looked at Ethan, and the smile did not change in any quantifiable way, which was itself a kind of information. "Victoria," he said. "I was wondering where you'd gone." He looked at the table. "And your 4 engineers." "Daniel," she said. Her voice had become something smaller and more guarded, like a door pulled almost shut. "I don't think I know your friend," Daniel Cross said, looking at Ethan with the smile still in place. "Ethan Cole," Ethan said. "Daniel Cross." He extended his hand across the table, and Ethan shook it. The handshake was the kind that conveys information through calibrated pressure, not aggressive, but very specific about hierarchy. Are you in financial services? Tech? I don't think I've seen you at a hail event before. I fix heating systems, Ethan said. A brief pause. The smile recalibrated itself so slightly that someone not paying attention would have missed it. Ah, maintenance, useful work. He pulled a chair from a nearby table, not asking, just doing it, and sat at the edge of the group with the ease of a man who had never been in a room where he didn't belong. Victoria, Kellerman was asking about the Q2 projections. I told him you'd follow up Monday. I have it scheduled, she said. The board meeting's been moved to the 14th. Mercer's travel conflict. I know. You hadn't confirmed you'd received the... I received it, Daniel. A silence. Elise, at the end of the table, had gone very still. Daniel Cross turned to Ethan with the air of someone who has decided to be generous with their attention. Must be interesting work. Buildings like this, the infrastructure is always... It is, Ethan said. Another pause. Cross looked at him with the patient expression of a man unaccustomed to being interrupted. I was saying, the infrastructure is always more complicated than the outside suggests, Ethan said. Yes, especially older buildings. The Harrington has 3 different heating systems from 3 different decades. They don't speak to each other. He picked up his tea. But they can be made to work. Cross looked at him for a moment. Then he laughed short, contained. Quite right. He turned back to Victoria. I wanted to discuss the Kellerman account privately before the evening. The girls are here, she said. Of course. He stood smoothly. He looked at the girls in turn, Luna, Ivy, Nora, and finally Elise, who had not looked up. Good evening, ladies, and then to Ethan, the smile fully operational. Good to meet you, Cole. He walked away toward the bar with the ease of a man executing a temporary retreat. The table was quiet. He's very smooth, Ivy said finally. He just did it with a nice face, said Elise. It was the most she had said all evening. The other 3 looked at her. She was still studying her cup. Victoria Hale made a small sound, not quite a laugh, not quite a sigh. She looked at Ethan. He did not say anything. It was Elise who started crying, not loudly. Not the way children cry when they are performing distress for an audience, the escalating signal broadcast that begins at a certain pitch and climbs. This was the other kind. The kind that happens when something has been held together for a long time and a small thing, random and unpredictable, causes the architecture of the holding to simply shift. What caused it was the quartet. They had started playing something that Ethan did not recognize, something slow and low, strings only. The kind of music that does not call attention to itself but occupies the air of a room completely. Elise had been looking at the musicians for perhaps 30 seconds when her hands, which were folded on the table in front of her, moved in a small involuntary adjustment like a body reacting to something before the mind catches up. And then her face changed and she cried. She didn't make a sound. Her face was turned slightly away. Her shoulders were very still, the way shoulders get when you are putting everything into not being visible. Ethan looked at the other 3. Luna had gone very quiet. Ivy had placed her hand on the edge of the table near Elise without touching her. Nora was watching Ethan with an expression that said, "This is a thing that happens, and we are not sure what to do, and we are watching to see what you do." He moved without deciding to. He did not think about it. He did not weigh the optics of a man in work clothes kneeling on the floor of a 5-star hotel ballroom. He did not calculate what Victoria Hale or Daniel Cross or any of the suited, practiced people within sightline would make of the gesture. He simply knew what it was to be small in a room of people who were not looking at you, and to be crying in a way that was trying very hard not to be visible, and to need someone to acknowledge both of those facts without amplifying them. He pushed back from the table, walked to Elise's side, and crouched down to her level, not kneeling exactly, not the formal posture of an adult addressing a child, but the lower position that says, "I am not above this." His knee pressed the marble floor. His face was at her height. She noticed. She didn't look at him, but she noticed, in the way you feel the position of someone in a room without looking at them. He reached into the inner pocket of his jacket. He took out a folded piece of paper, thin, soft, worn at the creases from being folded and unfolded many times, covered in the large, uncertain letters of a child learning to write. He set it on the table beside her without a word. She looked at it. The paper said, in the careful, enormous print of a 5-year-old, "Daddy, I miss Mom today, but I am okay because you are still here." Below it, in smaller letters, added later in a different pen, "I am okay." Elise read it twice. "That's from your son," she said. "He misses his mother?" "She died," Ethan said, before he was old enough to remember her. Elise was quiet for a moment. "He says he's okay," she said. "He is okay," Ethan said. "He's a very okay person." "How do you know?" "Because he wrote it twice." He pointed to the smaller line at the bottom. "He wrote it the first time and then he went back and made sure." Elise looked at the paper again. The tears had stopped not because something was fixed, but because something had been seen. "Our father didn't write anything," she said. "When he left, he just left." "I know," Ethan said. "How do you know?" "Because that's the kind of thing you just know." She finally looked at him directly. Full eye contact. Her eyes were dark and steady and very young and also, in some way he couldn't articulate, very old. "Your son sounds nice," she said. "He would like you," Ethan said. "He likes people who are honest." She looked at the paper once more, and then she said, "You can have it back." He took it back. He folded it along the same worn creases. Victoria Hale, across the table, had not moved or spoken. She was watching him with an expression Ethan had no category for, not warm, not analytical, but some third thing that was neither. Daniel Cross came back in 12 minutes, not 10. He came from the direction of the bar this time, and he had a drink in his hand, and he moved through the room with the slightly amplified confidence of someone who has been gathering themselves in a private way. He reached the table. He looked at Victoria. "The terrace?" he said. She looked at him. "Victoria, there are some things that would benefit from a quieter—" "The board received the restructuring proposal," she said. Her voice was the kind of flat that is not empty but compressed a sound under pressure. "I know Mercer's objections. I've addressed them in the supplementary documentation, which I sent Thursday. You told the board you hadn't received it." Cross's expression underwent a small, controlled adjustment. "There was a filing issue." "There was no filing issue. My assistant confirmed delivery. 3 times. She set her napkin on the table. You've been doing this for 4 months, Daniel. Delaying the board vote, managing information, running the conversation through yourself." He looked around the room, briefly the reflex of a man who manages perception. "This isn't the venue. You decided the venue when you came to this table." He turned to Ethan, a smooth pivot, the kind that reframes the audience. "Perhaps we might." "He stays," said Luna. Cross looked at her. "He stays," Luna said again. Cross looked at Victoria. His expression had become something more careful, more managed. The smile put away for now. "Victoria, I've been trying to protect the company's interests. Our interests. The restructuring is moving too fast. The board doesn't have confidence. The board has my confidence. You've been working to undermine it." She stood up, not quickly, slowly, deliberately. The way people stand when they have made a decision before they stand. "I want your letter of resignation on my desk Monday. If it's not there, I'll have legal prepare the termination documentation, and we'll have a very different conversation about the information flow irregularities." The room, as rooms do when something real happens inside them, had subtly shifted the nearest conversations quieter. the body language of the nearest clusters rearranging without turning. People were listening without appearing to. Cross stood very still. "You're making a mistake," he said. "I've made others," she said. "This is a correction." He looked at her for a long moment. At the table, at Ethan, at nothing in particular. And then he picked up his glass and he walked away with the stride of a man who needs everyone watching him to see a man who is choosing to leave. The room resumed. Victoria sat back down. For a moment, no one said anything. Then Nora said, "That was good." "Don't," Victoria said. "I mean it," Nora said. "I know you mean it." Victoria looked at her daughter with the expression of a woman who is aware, on a cellular level, that she is being observed. "That's why I said don't." But her hands, Ethan noticed, had unclenched in her lap. The girls fell asleep in stages. It happened in the way children fall asleep in public. Elise first, going boneless in her chair at some point after 10 o'clock, her head finding Nora's shoulder without ceremony. Then Ivy, who fought it as long as she could and lost. Then Nora. Luna lasted longest, sitting upright with her hands still folded, eyes increasingly unfocused, until finally she blinked very slowly and stopped blinking. The hotel had sent up a car service for Victoria's party, a long black vehicle, warm, with 2 car seats already installed, a detail that told Ethan something about how often this scenario played out. A hotel employee had appeared, very quietly, to confirm the arrangement. The girls were still asleep. Victoria had not moved to wake them. "You don't have to stay," she said. "Greg finally messaged," Ethan said. He held up his phone. The message read, "Sorry man got pulled to the East Wing. You're clear. Submit your hours tomorrow. So I'm not waiting for anything. But you're still here." He thought about that. "The tea got better," he said. She looked at him, the ghost of that almost smile. This time it came slightly further. She said, "I read People. It's occupational. I can't turn it off." "What did you read?" She looked at the sleeping children, the particular glance of a parent who has looked at sleeping children so many times it has become its own language. "You fix things carefully," she said. "Not just technically. You think about whether it'll hold." He said nothing. "The way you spoke to Elise," she said. "You didn't try to fix her. You just made it so she wasn't alone in it. She didn't need fixing." "No." She was quiet for a moment. "I've been trying to fix them for 3 years. Since Marcus left." A pause. "Their father." She stopped, started again. "I think I've been compensating. Providing more. Better school. Better tutors. Better everything I could measure. As though the deficit had a unit." "It doesn't," Ethan said. "I know that now." She looked at Elise, small and asleep and unknowingly clutching the edge of the tablecloth. "She's the one who shows me when something isn't working." She goes quiet. And a breath. I didn't know how to go quiet back. Ethan reached into his pocket. He took out the keychain, the red clay handprint, NC scratched into the back and set it on the table between them. "He made this for me when he was 3, he said. He was very proud of it. He said it was so I'd always have his hand." A pause. "His mother died before he was born. Hemorrhage. There was no warning." He picked the keychain back up, turned it over once in his fingers. "I carried him home from the hospital alone. And I thought, I don't know how to do this. I don't know what I'm doing." And then he held my finger, in that way newborns do. And I thought, you don't need to know. You just need to be here. She looked at the keychain. "He sounds like the kind of person who makes things make sense," she said. "He tries." Ethan's mouth curved, the smallest movement. "He's 5. He has opinions about everything. He told me last week that oatmeal cookies are the worst cookies, and then he ate 6 of them." She smiled. Actually smiled, this time, and it reached things that had not been reached all evening. "Luna is like that," she said. "She has an official position on every subject. She holds it until it conflicts with new information, and then she updates it without acknowledgement, like it was always her opinion. She's going to run something." Ethan said. She already runs this household. The quartet had stopped playing. The ballroom was thinning guests, collecting coats, the efficient, small ceremonies of departure. The snow was still falling outside, quieter now, the major event of it over, just the steady, patient continuation. Ethan turned the keychain over in his hand once more and put it back in his pocket. "The anchor," Victoria said. "On the back of the keychain. NC," he said, his initials. "It looks like an anchor." He looked down at his pocket. He hadn't noticed that. He took it out again, turned it over. The scratched initials, a child's hand, uncertain, pressing too hard, did look like an anchor, in the way that children's marks always look like something else, something truer than what they meant. "I suppose it does," he said. She looked at it for a long moment. "Something to hold on to," she said. He met her eyes. There was a space of silence that was not empty. The way certain silences are not empty, not the silence of people who have nothing to say, but of people who are deciding whether to say the thing they have, and have not decided yet, and are comfortable, for the first time in a while, with the not deciding. He left through the side exit. Not the grand main entrance, with its revolving door and its canopy, and its queue of black cars, the side exit, the one behind the service corridor, the one with the push bar, and the small square window at eye level. The exit he had come in through at 4 o'clock. He stood in the small space between the door and the outside, for a moment the transitional cold, the first real breath of it after hours of heated air, and let his eyes adjust to the dark. The snow was ankle-deep on the service path and still coming, fine and steady, catching in the overhead light in a way that turned the air silver. He walked. He was 3 blocks from the parking structure when his phone rang. He did not look at it. He looked at it. He looked away. He answered. "This is going to sound strange," Victoria Hale said. Her voice on the phone was different from her voice across a table smaller, without the architecture of the room around it. "Go ahead," he said. "The front doorbell panel of my house has been broken for 6 months. The latch on the gate doesn't catch properly. The second-floor bathroom has a pipe that sounds like it's negotiating with itself every time someone runs the hot water." A pause. "I've been meaning to have someone come." He walked. Snow crunched under his boots. "I know a guy," he said. A silence. "I thought you might," she said. He stopped walking. He was at the corner of Harrington and Elm, the intersection lit orange-yellow by a street lamp that was doing its best against the snow. A car moved slowly through the intersection, its headlights soft and diffused. "Tuesday," he said. "I have a full morning. Afternoons open." "Tuesday afternoon," she said. "I'll have someone. Just the address," he said. Another pause. Smaller. "Just the address," she agreed. She gave it to him. He did not write it down. He did not need to. The house was in Newton, on a street that curved between old maples, their branches bare now, holding the weight of the past 3 days' snow in low, careful arches. The house was large, not enormous, but large in the way of houses that have been built to last, that have more rooms than any one person's daily life fills. Georgian brick, white trim, 4 panes to each window, symmetrical, steady. The gate, as advertised, did not catch. He stood in front of it for a moment. He pressed it open and let it swing. It moved smoothly on the hinge, good hinge, well maintained. The problem was the latch mechanism, which was stiff from cold and years of not being addressed. A 20-minute fix, possibly less, maybe some cleaning. A new striker plate if the existing one had worn past the point of adjustment. He walked up the path. The front steps were swept recently. The snow only slightly accumulated again since whoever had swept them. The doorbell panel was mounted on the left pillar. The kind of thing that costs more than most people spend on a month of groceries and works perfectly until one small component fails and then refuses to work at all. He pressed the button. Nothing. He knocked. The door opened. She was not in the gray dress. She was in something dark and plain, and she had her hair down. And she looked, for the first time, like someone who lived somewhere. There was coffee in her hand. She looked at his toolbox with the same direct assessment she had applied to everything. "Tuesday afternoon," she said. "Tuesday afternoon," he agreed. She stood aside. He came in. The house was warm, and the ceilings were high, and there were shoes in a row by the door, 4 small pairs and 1 large pair, the small ones in varying states of alignment that implied 4 different personalities. There was a drawing on the wall near the stairs, framed, 4 figures in blue-green, holding hands, with a large figure standing behind them that was labeled, in backward letters, MOLM. There was a space beside the large figure. The space was not empty, exactly, it was a kind of deliberate whiteness, a part of the drawing that had been left unfinished, or had been finished and then changed. He did not point to it. He looked away. "Gate first," he said. "Gate first," she agreed. He went back outside. He crouched by the gate mechanism and opened his toolbox and took out what he needed. Adjustable wrench, screwdriver, a small brush for the cleaning, and the striker plate he had picked up at the hardware store on the way, because the dimensions she had given over the phone were exactly what he had expected, and there had been no reason to wait for diagnosis when the diagnosis was already clear. He worked. The street was quiet in the way that streets are quiet in the early afternoon of winter, on days that are technically work days. A stillness with the quality of held breath. A dog walked past with its owner. A car passed slowly. Somewhere down the block, a child was being called inside. He removed the old striker plate. The metal was corroded along one edge, not badly, but enough. Salt from winters. Neglect from decades. He cleaned the mount. He set the new plate. He tightened it to the point of resistance, and then a quarter turn passed that the right amount. Not more. He swung the gate. It closed. The latch caught. He stood and swung it open and closed twice more, listening. The sound was clean, a single note, contact and hold, no rattle, no protest. The way a gate should sound when it is doing what a gate is for. He turned. Victoria was standing on the front steps, coffee still in her hand, watching him. He looked at her. She looked at the gate. "That's it," she said. "For the gate," he said. "Doorbell's next." She stepped aside again. He carried his toolbox in. In the kitchen, through the doorway at the end of the hall, he could hear the sound of children. Low voices. A sound that might have been cards being shuffled. Someone, Nora, he thought, from the pitch, was narrating something to someone who was listening without comment. He set his toolbox down at the base of the doorbell pillar. He began to work. The panel was a Lynx 2400, common enough, made for a decade before being discontinued. Parts still available if you knew where to look. The relay inside it was the failure point on the majority of the units he had seen in houses like this, which was why he had bought a replacement at the hardware store on the way. Not because he was assuming, because preparation was not arrogance when the evidence was already clear. He opened the panel. The wiring inside was neat. Whoever had installed this originally had done it properly. Clean runs, labeled connections, the junctions tight. He appreciated that. There was a particular kind of satisfaction in working within a system that had been built well to begin with, where the repair was genuinely a repair and not a correction of someone else's poor choices layered beneath your own. The house, he was beginning to understand, had that quality throughout. Old, but maintained. Cared for in the way of things that someone had paid close attention to before the attention lapsed. The latch on the gate had been like that. The old striker plate was corroded along one edge, worn past the point of adjustment, but not past the point of awareness. Someone had known it needed attention. It had simply been deferred. The way deferred maintenance always is, not because it was forgotten entirely, but because the day for it kept not arriving, kept being pushed 1 week forward, and then another, until the gap between knowing something and doing something had become too wide to see across. He understood that gap. He had lived in it for portions of his own life, not with houses, but with other things, with phone calls he meant to make, with photographs he meant to print and frame, with conversations that had needed to happen while there was still time for them to happen, and that he had told himself could wait until a quieter moment. And then there were no more moments. He set the old relay aside. He fitted the new one. Above him, the old maples bent slightly in the wind, patient, enduring, their roots deep below the frost line where the ground was still warm. The snow had stopped. The sky was the flat, silver white of a winter afternoon that has run out of drama and settled into simple continuation. Which is, in the end, what most days are. Not the crisis, not the chandelier, not the room full of people performing their best selves at each other. Just the gate that needs to catch. The pipe that needs to stop negotiating. The house, cold in some rooms, that someone is working on. There was a scuff of small feet in the hallway. Elise appeared in the doorway, not all the way into the hall, just present at the edge of it, holding a book against her chest with both arms. She looked at Ethan. He looked at her. "Hi," she said. "Hi," he said. She looked at the toolbox. At the doorbell panel. "Open now. Wires visible." "Is it complicated?" "Not very," he said. "There's a relay that failed. It's a common part. I brought one." She watched him work for a moment. "Is your son good at school?" she said. He looked at her. "He's learning to read. He's very determined about it." "I'm good at math," she said. "Luna is better at reading, but she says I'm better at math. She doesn't usually say people are better than her." "She sounds like someone who's accurate," Ethan said. Elise looked at the relay in his hand. "When you fix something," she said, "does it stay fixed?" He turned the part over once. "Depends on what it is. Some things stay fixed. Some things need checking again. You do the work, and you check, and you do it again if you need to." He looked at her. "That's not a bad thing. It just means you don't do it once and walk away." She thought about this. "Dad walked away," she said. "I know. You didn't." He was quiet. He fit the relay into place. He connected the leads in the correct order and pressed the panel back to the mount. "I fixed your gate," he said. "I'm going to fix your doorbell. And then I'm going to go look at the pipe upstairs." He picked up the screwdriver. "I'll be back Tuesday if anything else needs work." Elise looked at him with those dark, steady, old young eyes. "We have a lot of things that need work," she said. He looked up at her. She was very small in the doorway, holding her book against her chest, her hair loose from whatever it had been tied with that morning, a few strands across her forehead, the rest falling to her collar. She looked exactly like herself. Not like Luna's quieter twin, not like a category. Exactly. Specifically, her. "I know," he said. "I'm not in a hurry." From the kitchen, Nora's narrating voice rose and fell, measured, unhurried. The voice of someone who has decided the story she is telling deserves to be told correctly. From somewhere upstairs came the careful footsteps of someone pacing, which was Luna's particular way of thinking, Ethan had already gathered. Outside, through the repaired gate, the street held its winter quiet. Ethan Cole pressed the doorbell. It rang, clear, steady, exactly the right note, the kind of sound a door makes when someone on the other side is expected, and the way is open, and the house is ready to receive. He packed his tools, the relay in the old panel and the latch in the old gate and the 4 pairs of small shoes lined up by the door, and the space beside the figure in the drawing, and the $11 still folded in a pocket he couldn't see all of it, held together in the afternoon light like the first. Credible evidence of something that has not happened yet, but will. Not because it is fated, because someone showed up on a Tuesday afternoon with a striker plate and a relay and a red clay handprint in his pocket, and he did not walk away.